Hi guys, welcome to the pub. Thank you very much for joining us, and thank you very much for the regular guests who turn up. Really great feedback, and it's interesting the way this has become part of people's week, which is really quite flattering. The purpose of the pub is to get to grips with the emerging situation, which is certainly different, and to have an open and honest discussion about what's unfolding and what to do about it. I think what we also do is to shamelessly share what we've learnt to overcome seemingly impossible challenges. And also we're going to suggest some action that you take out of this as well, which frankly involves selling. So if you're not up for action, if you're not up for selling, then I suggest you drop off this call. What's the common denominator between our experience? Our credibility comes from 200 company turnarounds, and pricing is absolutely core to all of those situations. And I think at the moment, what's similar is the high levels of uncertainty and the extreme challenge, and actually being able to, how do you overcome this? So I'm delighted to say that Paul Moers is joining us today. And I have no idea what Paul's going to say, which is fantastic. We're going to have three quite different inputs today. It's totally unscripted, and Paul's going to talk about the unfolding challenge and pricing. So I think just to recap on some of the things we've learned to date, there's a rediscovery of what has been lost, and I emphasize the word lost because I think we're rediscovering intimacy with each other as being the foundations of profits, and we're rediscovering love and connection, which is an interesting word in business, but I think it's they're also important. But I think there's also big buying shifts, and it's also important to do the right thing. There's a big emphasis on local and community as well, which is becoming increasingly important. And I think there's something about as well in the new now, an urgency, yet there's a level of inaction, hence our encouragement to take new action. We'll try and describe what we mean by new action. I think that there's something else which has just emerged, which is actually encouraging misalignment. A lot of leadership's about encouraging alignment. I think we'd like to encourage misalignment, because this actually is the rudder, and this is the rudder for the jazz band. Right, without that misalignment, what is going to steer the business? And I think a lot of businesses are on track, trying to align behind something when in fact that just takes them off course. So that's something else that I think we've learned. So I'm really delighted that Paul's joining us today. Paul will speak, and we'll ask some questions. And during this process as well, you're welcome to drop any questions in the chat box. We'll try and cover those off. David isn't here, who's normally here, but so I think we're going to have plenty of diverse opinions. So hold on to your seats and enjoy yourselves. So over to you, Paul. Thank you very much for joining us, and look forward to what you've got to contribute.
Thank you very much, Tom. I would like to talk about the race to the bottom, and I think I want to focus on three things. First of all, the race to the bottom is actually, it means that we in the UK are exporting our labor problems and environmental problems towards, for instance, the Asian countries. And I think that's not a very clever thing to do. For instance, your jeans, they need 7,000 liters of water. They need very poisonous adhesives. So what are we doing in those countries? The second thing is, I noticed the hiccup in the supply chain in the UK, but everywhere in the world during the corona lockdowns. And I was wondering, in the UK, I saw a couple of factories with a turnover of about 50, 60 million pounds. And they couldn't produce the products because they simply missed a couple of essential components. And I asked them, what is actually the saving on those components? Actually, they didn't know. One of the factories was looking it up, and he said, well, it's only 10,000 pounds. And I think, how the hell can you close down a factory of 50, 60 million pounds in order to save a bloody 10,000 pounds? Very stupid. And the third thing I was wondering, if I look at the UK, the price war is causing a hell of a lot of problems for a hell of a lot of factories. We're talking about not only hundreds, we're talking about 1,000 factories in the UK facing severe problems, and they might go bankrupt. And it's suppliers to electronics, to fashion shops, to food shops, you name it. Now, and then I was wondering, together with Tom, we have learned from Kotler the 5 Ps: price, people, promotion, place, product. And why are managers only talking about price? Are they dyslexic? Do they suffering from Alzheimer? I don't know. But why are they talking about price? And also, if you look at the communication of many companies, it's 80% about price and only 20% about the product, or 20% about your product. And that's why Tom Christians and I decided we have to write a book. Fuck the price, long live the service. Because things has to change. Just as an example, if you look at food stores and supermarkets, they're competing like hell. But if you look at the amount of money we spent on food, that was in 1957 about 33% of the family spending. It's only now 16%. So why fighting so much with prices? And I think, and we think that you need a new mindset. And don't focus on price anymore and any longer. Start to make money and start to be creative. And we developed, for instance, because people are saying, yeah, but what should we do? And we said, why not focusing on service? Because a lot of the British people are asking for service. Actually, they are begging for service. And we developed, for instance, the Hives model. It means health, indulgence, value, easy, and smile. And just to give an example, if you talk about health, what kind of service can I offer? For instance, bio products, no child labor. If you look at value, why not looking at incentive programs instead of discounts? If you look at easy, we saw a nice example, M&S, where you can swap in your old clothes for new clothes, and then they make sure they give it to a charity. Or how about Smile? And if I look at a British company, Gymshark, they were able to say, you have to dress to impress if you are busy with a workout. That's a totally different mindset. And I think, and we think that is brilliant. So get rid of this stupid race to the bottom. And Corona has learned us one thing: we need to change our attitude. We need to change our approach towards the market. And there are many consumers willing to pay, because not everybody in the UK is poor. Of course, people are losing their jobs, and you have to think about them. That's for sure. But in general, people still have money. So don't give it away. Keep it for yourself. And that's, in fact, the story about our book, Fuck the Price, Long Live the Service. And we give a hell of a lot of examples about companies who are doing it wrong, companies are doing the right thing. And we try to be of help for companies to change the attitude, but also to change the mindset. And it starts with the manager. Yeah,
fantastic. Thank you very much, Paul. I think I love the shameless selling of your book. I think that's fantastic. I think we should all be shamelessly selling, and certainly fuck sounds a lot better in Dutch than it does in English. So thank you very much for the Dutch translation. But thank you very much for that clarity. I think you're absolutely right. 2 questions for you from May.
But it's time for clarity, yeah. So
yeah.
That's why it's so important to use those type of words.
Yeah,
to make it clear to people and to shock them.
No, I think absolutely. I think we all have a different gift, and I think that's I think clarity is absolutely critical. I think what do you think the root cause of the focus on price, the myopic focus on price, the sole focus on price? I'll share some thoughts on that. But what are your thoughts? Why do you think we're ending up in a race to the bottom on price?
Oh, it's simply a lack of vision. It's simply a lack of pride. It's simply a lack of professionalism. I don't understand all those managers, because like we said, Tom and I, you have the 5 Ps from Kotler. There's such a broad possibilities to use. And the most easy way is the price. Yes, of course, that's bloody easy. It's so easy to lower the price, but it's very difficult to increase your price.
Yeah.
And I think we are all blind for instance, market share. We are blind for customers who love us. And we think if we increase the price, they run away. But if you don't tell your story, of course they run away. For instance, a Harley Davidson, if you want to buy a Harley Davidson, you go to the store and you ask them, what is the discount? You better go right away to the hospital because they kick you out. They say, what the hell are you talking about? The discount? This is a Harley Davidson.
Yeah.
And they show you the pride in the product. And they tell you why it's such an experience to drive on such a bicycle and on such a bike. And about all the things they do. They have a gathering with 200,000 bike riders in the Hackersee every year in Austria. I mean, that's all a happiness, that smile. And so they are focusing much more on other details than price only.
Yeah. And how do you see the influence of online as well, Paul? I mean, we've obviously got the shift to online, which I think is grossly exaggerated. But how do you see the balance, and how do you see online driving price and the race to the bottom?
I think online is more of a friend than an enemy. That's the first paradigm you should focus. And you see, for instance, John Lewis. I find it very interesting. It's a company who knows everything about service, but they have now they opened an online Christmas market. I think that's a brilliant idea because with the lockdowns, you never know if you can go to a Christmas market. So they use online in their favor. But even online, why only focusing on price? Why not telling your story? I mean, you have a connection directly with your clients and tell them why it is so special what you are offering. And companies like Harrods, for instance, are very able to do this type of things. Like in Holland, for instance, the department store De Bijenkorf, part of the Selfridges group.
Yeah, thank you very much. That's great. I'm going to contribute some stuff, Paul, which is not in line with what you're talking about, but I think I'd like to challenge some of your thinking. By all means, come back and ask me some questions afterwards. Yeah. So I'm going to share some stuff around retail turnaround from actually having been in situations where it's been imperative to increase pricing to generate cash to get businesses back on track, and I'll share some of our experience. So I think the first thing I'd say is I think we often think that it's obvious that we are where we are without really challenging it, as if it's right. I think that said, we don't understand how we got there, what drives us, rather than actually what do we need to go back to, right? So that's the first thing I'd say. And then, so for example, people say things like online retail growth is irreversible. Okay, that's a statement which creates stasis. I think the other thing is, in relation to pricing, I think the old financials are pretty much irrelevant. So whatever's happened in the past is pretty much irrelevant with the future. And I think the same thing applies to pricing as well. In terms of the basics of pricing, it's about making money. We shouldn't lose sight of it. Businesses must make money, and there's a simple logic around the gross margin plus the desired profit, which equates to the new gross margin, and that should be the target. And I think that this also comes down to the core business, and the core business is actually what is difficult to replicate, which I think is one of the challenges with online. If you have got something selling the same product and it's easy to replicate, then there's a challenge with pricing. I think the other thing is the analysis around what's actually making money and what's not making money, the activity-based costing. And then you've got a challenge. Any business has always got products that make money, they've got products that lose money. You've got to make a decision, and that's the core of a turnaround, cutting back to the defendable core or profitable core. I think the other thing I'd say as well, there's a confusion around profit, around people-to-people relationships, which is around retail. Online, not a store retail, which is very much relationship centric, rather than the confusion with experience, right? Experience is something completely different rather than relationship, people to people relationship. And I think our analysis suggests that it's relationship that drives profit, not experience. So I think the assumptions as well need challenging as well. So you talked about some of the environmental issues, and I completely agree. I think the answer to this is higher pricing, fundamentally, to pick up the pieces of the damage, regardless of wherever it is in the world, which drives less consumption, because we're fundamentally buying too much stuff. But 60% of food gets 40% food gets chucked away, 60% of clothes get chucked away without being worn. And I think the other thing I'd say is if the price is misaligned with the core business, you're basically on a hide into nothing. So if you look at Revolut, their business is all around transactional, which has got nothing to do with their core business. So they're not proving viability or anything. And I think that leaves businesses very vulnerable. I think the other thing is also the cost to acquire new customers. If you look at the businesses as they progress, the cost to acquire new customers should come down. And if a business isn't working, my view is Revolut is not working, Ocado is not working as well, the cost to recruit actually goes up. And the profitability is not there either. So I think I'd also say from our experience of retail, there are 3 buying stages. The first one is, what's the product that gets someone transacting to get to know you? There's always something, and there's a way to sell that. Sometimes it's bundling and other such tools to get people to experience and do some business with you. The second level is the mid-range products where they're price comparable and price sensitive. And the third one is what I describe as your McLaren, or as you said, the Harley Davidson, which is the one you do not discount, right? And that's where you get into a situation where the price is proportional to the value. So there's no one blanket. There's a customer journey, but there's no one blanket answer to any one of those 3 things. Although the one in the middle, which is particularly price sensitive. There's some other human flaws around anchor pricing, which people are largely unaware of, particularly online. So I think where's the threats in this? I think tech, the issue with tech and online is visibility. So there's huge visibility, which regardless of the service, which is pretty much on par, and that drives the focus on price in our experience. I think there's some other things which people don't fully understand, like the Amazon model, which is what I describe as being a sales intermediator, which is basically screwing the supply chain because they control the sales. And there are a lot of businesses who cannot go anywhere else to sell their product, and they're stuck, and they're then fixed in a commercial model, which is dangerous. And Amazon, for example, have dropped a lot of their suppliers, which hasn't had a lot of publicity, but it should have. The other thing about Amazon is it's driven by endless growth as well. So little publicized about Jeff Bezos. He is going to space because he recognizes that the growth of Amazon is to trash the planet, for example. And not many people know that. So the other thing,
I agree.
Alibaba as well is another sinister business model, in my view, in the States, which is actually doing sales intermediation. Rather than B2C, it's B2B. And people are complaining about TikTok. That's going to be far worse, because when you start controlling B2B sales with a Chinese company, profitless growth, you're really into interesting territory in the US. And I think the other thing with China is they don't play by our rules at all. And we must consider China now. They focus on being aggressive and taking people out. It's very much more akin to war than collaboration. And the collaboration with Google and the Chinese company, which I forget, their ambition, for example, is to run a massive multi-billion company, hundreds of billions of turnover with no people whatsoever. So I think the interesting example from the Northwest in terms of how to combat this, there's a jewelry shop used to sell a lot of branded products, actually have now gone bespoke to get over this comparison thing and started making money. That's one strategy. I think that online is the future. No, it's not, because it's, in many cases, I think it's driving this route to the bottom. And there's a detailed discussion we can have, and I've got some analysis which I've shared with Ton on that in the past. And I think that the symptoms of this is actually justifying the status quo. So a lot of these tech businesses are actually about becoming Ponzi schemes. So, and they, because of the inertia they've got behind them, they're looking to raise endless money in line with huge losses. So I think the nuts and bolts of this is really around when we're buying things, have we got an interest in who's selling them to us, right? Because I think we're
definitely.
losing that relationship. And I think actually from a
but that's a branding issue, eh? If we are starting to losing that relationship, It's our fault as producers.
Yeah,
And we should try to change that as quickly as possible together with the retail channels.
yeah, 100%.
And so branding is a very important thing behind it. And the moment you start to explain your story, why you are so special, what you are offering to your clients, how you can make their life happy, things can change. And just to what I find interesting, I believe that online is a status quo that you never change that anymore. But I believe in omni-channel, so in both channels. And what I find interesting that you have in Holland a web shop called Coolblue. And the interesting thing about that shop is they're making a hell of a lot of money. And why? Because they are brilliant in the services they offer. They are brilliant in bringing a smile on your face. They are brilliant in writing you personalized postcards when you buy a product.
Yeah.
So even in online, you can actually enter emotion instead of only the ratio. And that is quite interesting. And what I find even more interesting, if you look at your decision process, 95% is emotion and only 5% is using your brains. So if that's the case, then why the hell are we only talking about price?
Yeah, I think in terms of I think there is bespoking. I think the bespoking does drive price increase because it then stops the parallel visibility. Selling a kettle, for example, kettle versus a kettle that runs itself type thing. So it reduces that comparison, but I don't think it actually changes the customer experience a great deal. I don't think it. I think what I mean by that, Paul, is I think as consumers have a responsibility in this as well. So if I buy something from you, if there's no relationship with you, it comes down to price.
So the relationship building is crucial. I think you're absolutely right.
And if we don't care, so for example, my daughter sells cake to a local cafe, right? And that cafe cares about this local community thing, and it cares about the local suppliers. And so I don't care how much I spend on coffee, right? But if I go to online to buy a coffee, then if I don't have a relationship with those people, and I think there's a responsibility on the buyer, and I challenge myself on this because when I go online, I've run a procurement for years as Ton has, and running large organisations, it comes down to price if there's no comparison. I think there's a responsibility to take a broader perspective. But I think the other thing I think is the stakes are really high. I just say there's one example in tech where there's a unicorn that we're currently working with where they haven't got the confidence to actually put their pricing up, and they could be generating lottery amounts of cash, yet they're focused on raising money, right? And that's the mindset shift that's got to take place, and that's what I describe as been the issue to fix. And we use this analogy in the Winning Thinking team about a jazz band, and the jazz band with virtually a clean sheet of paper, open mind strategy at all levels throughout the organisation, it steers. And I think this also includes in a retail environment, the guys on the shop floor, because the people on the shop floor know how much they can sell a shirt for, right? And they know how much the consumer's willing to pay, but no one asks them. And it's those people throughout the whole organisation that should be steering it at ground grassroots level. And I think there's a lot of decentralisation of procurement to drive these strategies as well, which is required, which is again all around relationships rather than experience. So I think there's some, and I think there's something other interesting. I think people talk about online, but I think there's been a really big shift to roller skates and experiential products where people are getting back to basics and much less digital experience. So there's some challenges with this which really have to be faced, because I think if people don't focus on the relationship side rather than the experience side, they're going to get themselves into trouble. But I think
I think you're absolutely right, because for instance, if you look at stores these days, actually their role is changing. In the past, it was a purely logistic role. You were happy if you could buy the stuff. But these days, the logistic role is not that important anymore. It's much more the experience role and much more the service role. And that can make the difference. I was a couple of weeks ago in München, and I was standing in front of the large department store Kaufhaus, and they were saying 50% discount on everything. And I looked at a very little small store at the other side of the street in front of Kaufhaus, and they said, now all our products 3% discount.
Yeah.
And I think that's brave. That guy had the guts, because that guy was saying, I'm selling very special knives for your kitchen, etc. And I'm explaining you the whole story.
Yeah.
And if I give a discount, the best I can do is 3%. Yeah. But forget it that I gave 50%. And he's building a relation. Yeah. He's building a story. He's giving you service. He's giving you knowledge. Yeah. And therefore he has the guts to ask a high price. And I think many more managers should think about that little example, that it starts with yourself. What is it? What is your vision about the product you are selling, and how you are going to sell it? Yeah. And once again, if I see how easy people give money away, then I'm really, really shocked, and I really wonder, why the hell do we pay those people?
Yeah. I think that's bang on. I think, we describe that as being the core business. So you get clear on the core business and then you sell your core business. Yeah. That's brilliant. Anyway, thank you, Paul. That's brilliant. So I'm just going to hand over to Tom, and no doubt we'll have some questions and some more discussion. So thank you for that. So, Tom, what are your thoughts? Yeah.
Well, there is always some middle ground, right? It's impossible to forgo about pricing. It's also stupid just to focus on price, right? If in this particular country we will have 3 million unemployed because of the COVID crisis and the fallout of the COVID crisis, then obviously there will be quite a few people that are cash-strapped and will be searching for the best possible bargain, if you like, because they simply can't afford anything else. But at the same time, there are plenty others that can. And therefore, whether it's a retailer or a manufacturer or a tech company, they all have to look at what is my role in the world. If you have products and an existence that you can only keep up by giving your stuff away, you could even argue, should I exist at all? There are certain well-positioned companies that can play the price game simply because that is in their DNA, that is what they're good at, that is what they've always done, and that is what makes them successful. A good example is the German discounters that are growing and will also continue to grow here in the UK. But if you compete with the German discounters, and you're a service supermarket in this particular example, you can't compete on price because it's their strength, it's not your strength. So although they try, and they try to talk to the consumer about low pricing, all you do actually is educate the consumer. The price is the most important P, the 5 P's that Paul have mentioned, and you drive them towards your competition rather than get them into your store. So therefore, these particular concepts, that we discussed about John Lewis and Marks and Spencer's earlier in this call. I mean, these are the type of concepts you have to use in order to tie the consumer towards you, because the race in terms of competing on price will not give you any success. And it is so simple. It's not so simple to find the solutions. It's not directly simple. What is the service I need to offer? What is the bespoke concept I need to offer? Of course, there's a lot of hard work, much more difficult than just saying I knock 10% of the price. But the point is, you can't compete with a marketing mix element where the others are better in. The others are simply better. So forget it. And just go back to what your strengths are and try to find your strength.
Yeah, fantastic. Why do you think that is, Tom? In terms of, I think there's an issue around, I describe it as being a sort of lack of confidence, because I think at the moment it does require real courage to stand up, set out your store to compete against the German discounters. And I've supplied into German retail as well. The margins are completely different to the US versus Europe. Very aggressive, very, very focused businesses. What do you think is stopping people actually selling selling their core business confidently in the way you described?
Well, I think first of all, you must have to make sure that you offer something which is either better or different. Because you can only be better, different, or cheaper, right? There is not any other thing you can do. So if you're not able to be better or different, then you can't sell more expensive, right? So you have to be better or different. Then the question is, what is different? Different could be better quality, could be a relationship with the consumer, could be bespoke, whatever it is, but it has to make you different from the guys that sell on price. Or you just have to be better. And what is better? That is the fact that if someone enters your store, you have 10 times more articles to choose from, if that is considered better. Sometimes you wonder if it's not too much, but it's for very much people it's considered better. Or it's intrinsic product quality, right? It has to be better. Or your story has to be better because it's tied to whatever provenance, or it's tied to anything else, history or legacy. But you have to be either better or different. If not, you will be dragged into this particular price race, and you will lose out. I think a lot of the retailers in the UK are actually better or different. UK is a country of retailers. Many concepts that have been developed in the UK have been exported to other countries and have been extremely successful. So there is no reason not to be confident. I think British retailers are among the best in the world. It's probably more because of structure. About governance, about decision-making power. If you do everything in an head office instead of in a store where you're close to the consumer and read the consumer and build that relationship, it becomes obviously easier to build that confidence than if you're somewhere in London in a head office and all you see are spreadsheets. So it has something to do, I think, with scale. It has something to do with governance. It has something to do with being detached in the end from the consumer with whom you have to build a relationship.
Yeah, fantastic. Thank you very much. That's really clear. Any other thoughts, Paul? What are your thoughts?
No, I think I agree fully with Tom. But what I also find interesting, that even the discounters are starting to think different. What happened, Ton and I are writing about a large discounter in Germany called Penny. They have about 4,000 discount shops. And they said, actually, and I find that pretty amazing, the chairman is saying, actually, we are part of the problem. And what they did is they put the real price for products on the shelves. Not that people have to pay it, but he is explaining to the consumers, to the buyers, that maybe this is not a fair price at all. Because do the people get enough money, the suppliers? Are there environmental problems, etc.? And it's quite amazing that the German discounter is trying to do things differently right now. And I think it's a small signal that maybe we are starting to learn something from Corona. Because the world is maybe not as easy as we thought. And we have to be beware of what is happening in the world. And pricing is maybe part of the problem. Maybe, I'm pretty sure of it.
Yeah.
So we can learn something from this discount. And I think going back to the factories in the UK, I fully agree with Tom. If I look at the British retailers, they are extremely innovative. In my years when I worked for Albert Heijn, the Dutch Ahold chain, I often went to the UK just to learn how the UK business is running. And we learned a lot of lessons. And so be proud on what you are doing. And don't kill hundreds and even thousands of factories in the UK. Because now the UK is leaving the EU. How stupid is it to lose factories? You better make sure that you have your own production. And why not moving production from China to the UK? if you robotize factories, at least the difference in the labor costs are gone. So be creative. Make sure you have a plan. Make sure you have a mission, a vision, and try to change things. And try to be there with the consumer. And I agree with Tom. Don't make plans in your head office. Go to the shop and see what's happening over there. Talk to the customers and make your own customer journey and try to learn from that.
Mm. And how do you see the balance between people interaction, Paul, versus technology? Where do you think the right
I think
starting point is?
It never will go as slow as today. If you talk about technology, the speed will only increase. But I believe that a lot of companies, and Ton and I are writing in our book about it. I think a lot of technology is misused by a lot of companies. They use chatbots, and I don't know if you talk to chatbots, I always start fighting with the bloody things because they never do what I ask. And it's an example of the company, the insurer, for instance, has less cost. But me as a client, I'm really irritated. Yeah. So I think that technology can be of help, sure, but only if it really helps the customer and not if you try to lower your own costs and messing around with the customer.
Great. Yeah. Thank you, Paul. That's great. Tom, any final thoughts? You would like to just create a quick summary of what we've talked about?
Well, it's an interesting one to summarize. It's virtually impossible this particular time because of some of the outspoken opinions that have been mentioned. But just back to pricing. Focusing on the low price at the moment, which is probably 80% of the market, if you like, will of course be a race to the bottom, which has a couple of issues. First of all, we export problems to the third world, mainly environmental, labor problems. It's just something that, in the grand scheme of things, is unacceptable and has to be stopped. I would argue. Also to resolve some problems at home, because everything that is not produced and is not a labor contract somewhere else is actually production here locally and is jobs here locally. So to a certain extent, you could argue everyone wins if we stop exporting those problems to another place. COVID has learned us that focusing on small financial gains could actually have large financial impacts, because of factories that might not run as you are dependent on an international supply chain. So that there are many reasons why other elements than just price have to be taken into consideration. The other element that we discussed was the connection between technology and human contact, if you like. It's clear that technology, when it enhances the consumer journey, is a positive. If it is just focused on decreasing cost of the supplier or the retailer or any other person, insurance company or bank, but actually reduces consumer satisfaction, it is probably the wrong way to utilize technology. So something to be aware of. In general, looking at prices, there are three types of, within the service or product portfolio that you have to look at. You have to look at the product or service that is making the consumer or customer deal with yourself and start doing any business. Then there is probably a relatively large chunk of your products and services that are very comparable with other suppliers and other people in the market, where pricing obviously needs to be of a level that you don't price yourself out of the market. It is, to a certain extent, a commodity that you're dealing with. And there is a bucket of products and services that are unique to yourself, that are very difficult to replicate, and therefore you should not offer discount or even start pricing up. So really understanding the mix of services and products that you offer to the market to determine in which category these products or services fall, and therefore price accordingly, is crucial. And it's crucial for every business, but it's definitely crucial for every turnaround. So this is sort of some of the highlights, I would say, that I've picked up from this conversation.
Yeah, thank you very much, Tom. I'll just add a couple of points. I think strategically, we have to consume less at a higher price. Otherwise, the planet is screwed, we are screwed, and businesses are screwed. So we have to get our heads around paying a lot more money. £10 t-shirt or £5, £2 t-shirt has got to be £25 somehow.
Absolutely.
Somehow we have to make that transition. We have to do that immediately. I think the second thing, there's a disparity which I think is worth continuing the discussion, Paul, around. You talk about experience, I talk about people-to-people relationship in terms of a source of sustainable profit. I think we have to care about vendors as well. We have to, as consumers, care about vendors. You know,
absolutely.
In terms of their profitability, rather than just buying cheap. I think the last thing I'd say about this, because this is all about taking new action, is that quite frankly, you won't, people, because of the psychology of your core business, you won't see this. And actually, the Winning Thinking program does highlight that. So I'd encourage people to do that shamelessly, because it breaks that cycle. And it gives you the confidence, and it resets relationships to get this right. And the answer to this ultimately, I think, is the concept of the jazz band, which is you start with a clean sheet of paper. You've got the whole organization steering the ship on a daily basis to set pricing at the grassroots level, far less decentralized decentralized decision making at shop floor level. In terms of people-to-people contact is the easiest example in terms of store retail, but I think we need to find ways of replicating online as well. I think online does provide a wider range of product which you cannot service locally, but it needs to be, I do believe, in omni-channel retail. So, but I think there will be a limit to, as far as online goes. Certainly food, the margins are much lower than elsewhere, and it's just not profitable. Ocado will never be profitable. None of these online food retailers will ever be profitable. That's the interesting challenge with this. So that's the bitter pill for the investors to swallow, because these businesses are just to burn cash and actually do exactly the opposite of what you're suggesting, Paul. When that brilliant statistic of 33% to 16% in terms of consumption, that is where it was, and we need to get back to that to support the farmers and support the whole
absolutely.
Farmers.
And it's in the end in our own interest.
Yeah.
Actually, we really urge people to read our book. I hope it will be there in about 6-7 weeks.
Yeah, great.
Because that can help them to change their mindset.
100%. And let's also shamelessly take new action here as well, guys. So let's continue this discussion. This is not a nice to have type conversation. We're talking about collaboration. We're talking about some difficult issues here. So let's take some new action. Please just don't walk away from this thinking, oh yeah, I've taken this, that, and the other. Let's continue this dialogue, and let's, if the things we need to, misunderstandings, let's resolve and work on those moving forwards, because it's important we, collaborate on this stuff, because otherwise we're just talking and that's useless. So
absolutely.
Anyway, that's fantastic. Thank you very much, Paul, for joining us. It's been a real pleasure. And Tom, thank you again for your clarity. Great job, great diverse discussion, and thank you everyone for joining us.
Thank you very much, Tom, for being in your program. It's the first time I'm in a UK pub without drinking a beer, as a Dutchman. But I hope after Corona we can change that very quickly.
It's still a good laugh, though, isn't it, Paul? Don't like to disagree. Yeah, let's not forget the sense of humour. Yeah, fantastic. It's a real pleasure. Thank you very much, Paul and Tom. Great job. Cheers, guys.
Thank you.
Okay, cheers, guys.
Cheers.
Bye.
Cheers.
Bye.